consent agenda. I have a resolution waiving sewer connection, non-participant, capacity, and inspection fees for the Warren County Park District's construction of restroom facilities at the Morrow Veterans Park.
So moved.
Second.
And yes.
And I do have two add-ons as well. I have a resolution approving an appropriation adjustment from Commissioners General Fund 1101-1110 into Emergency Services Fund 1101-2850.
So moved.
Second.
Yes.
And the second add-on is approving an appropriation adjustment from Commissioners General Fund 1101-1110 into Building and Zoning Fund 1101-2300.
So moved.
Second.
And yes.
And that's all I have.
Very good. First agenda item, Ms. Martin, talking about bonds for Otterbein.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning. I'm here representing Otterbein Homes and their obligated group members. They are planning a bond issue in an amount not to exceed $100 million. These will be tax exempt, new improvement and refunding bonds. We currently expect the amount to come in closer to $82 million. We do not to exceed $100 million, just in case. Important to note, these are not general obligations of the county. These are conduit bonds being issued under Chapter 140 of the revised code, so they're hospital facility bonds. The county has been an issuer for Otterbein Homes on multiple bond issues before. Otterbein now has 19, or soon will have 19 locations throughout Ohio and one in Indiana. And they're just doing a terrific job and growing. Their model with their new improvements includes independent living facilities, and that's one of the pieces of what's being financed here. We've got new money that's financing new improvements both here at their Lebanon campus, but also in two other locations, St. Mary's and Granville. And then we're refunding three prior obligations, and in the resolution that you have before you, you will see those are in multiple counties around the state of Ohio. And so we're going out to all of those counties and getting approval of what we call public hospital agency agreements. That is an agreement that the commissioners will sign where the other counties are granting you jurisdiction for the purposes of issuing these conduit bonds. We are hoping to price on November 19th, and we have a short window for closing because Otterbein needs the funds in order to close on a new acquisition of property in Miami County, and that has to happen by like December 3rd. So we'll have a quick turnaround time on these, and they're open to any questions if you have on the resolution that's in your packet.
Very good. We appreciate the discussion. Otterbein's an important corporate citizen, very important to our county, and just for the record, we always stated that even though the public might hear a big number, $82 million, just to reiterate what you said, this is not an obligation of Warren County. No matter what happens, this is not a $82 million debt for the citizens of Warren County. We are just a conduit to where this entity can issue these bonds. And do we pass a resolution on this? Go ahead.
So I have a resolution determining the necessity of and authorizing the issuance and sale of not to exceed $100 million of healthcare facilities improvement and refunding revenue bonds, Series 2024, authorizing the execution and delivery of agreements of leases and subleases in connection therewith, authorizing the execution and delivery of an indenture of trust to secure such Series 2024 bonds, authorizing the execution of a bond purchase agreement with respect to said Series 2024 bonds, and authorizing a preliminary official statement and final official statement, a tax certificate and agreement, and various other documents in connection with the issuance of the Series 2024 bonds.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Very good. We've got a work session a little bit later, but we also have an executive session, and I'll entertain a motion to go ahead and go into that early.
Before we do that, I wanted to ask about this stabling operation. Is that okay?
Of course, you can do it now.
All right. You know, we've had a lot of communication with us, or at least with me, from certain of the boarders and other individuals, some on the Agricultural Society Board. And there's been some press coverage of the fact that the Agricultural Society, which is the lessee on this property and controls it from us, of our fairgrounds, and with the rentals of horse stalls. And they've apparently instructed all of the boarders to leave by December 1. And I've just read this press release that they issued, I guess, yesterday.
That's when I received it, was yesterday.
What's that?
That's when I received it, was yesterday.
And so I'd like some clarification, and I asked that this be provided to us commissioners, which our lawyer from the prosecutor's office, Bruce McGarry, gave to us. So first, Bruce, do we have any, we don't have any say over anything that's done. This fairground and how it is controlled is by the Agricultural Society, not by us. Is that right?
That's correct, pursuant to the lease and also there's statutory authority for that.
All right, and so with regard to their decision to order these renters to vacate the premises, that's a matter between them, the renters, and the Agricultural Society Board, but we don't have any say in that, is that right?
That's correct. There is a rental agreement is how that document is captioned between the horse boarders and the Ag Society.
All right, so, I mean, I have questions about what has been stated, but do we have any oversight function over the Agricultural Society and the fairgrounds at all?
No.
All right.
Unless it's provided for in the lease. And there's some reservation of rights in the lease. Commissioner Young will remember if they were to sublease, that would be the only way. And we don't have any subleases currently once the two trotting clubs left the fairgrounds that the commissioners are a party to. So we're not a party. Everything they do up there is pursuant to rental agreements, and we're not parties to those.
Do we have, like, Congress has some sort of oversight function, the United States Congress, and they have hearings to find out it's not within their authority to control the executive branch, but they have the ability to have hearings and to find out what's going on. Is that an oversight kind of function that we have as well, or are we prohibited from doing that?
I wouldn't say that you're prohibited from doing it. You can do what you want to do if there's two commissioners that want to do it. But you do not appoint the fair board members. You're not, that's all through a statutory process that they're created. And then they have their own mechanism for electing the board members and always have. You're not involved in any of that. So if you wanted to have some sort of meeting and invite someone, as long as two commissioners want to do that, that's fine, but you really don't have any oversight over what they're doing.
Okay, because, now this isn't a business that I'm really familiar with, and that is horse boarding. Because I grew up on a farm that was engaged in horse boarding. We boarded 60 horses there. It's nothing like 300 horses here, but I'm very familiar with the economics of this and how this is set up. And reading the document that has been provided to me this morning of October 28th, I have questions about this. But one of the things that I did notice is that it appears to me that their monthly rental rates are very, very low compared to what I'm familiar with. My lowest rate for renting a stall where we didn't do anything with the horses, and we had 3 different types of things, but one of them was that you rent a stall, you provide all the feed, you provide all the everything with the horse. You take care of the animal. We don't do anything except provide you with the stall. That was $250 a month. Up to full care, I have, it was like $500 to $600 a month, and that's inexpensive compared to the market. So I don't completely understand what they're doing and how they could possibly manage with $125 to $150 a month. However, that said, I don't know really what the provision is of services or non-services or what the expectations were, but I found it somewhat, I questioned how or why they would issue an order for a vacation of these stalls by December 1. That seemed awfully quick. And I'm assuming that this is because they don't really have rental agreements that have a term. They're on a month-to-month basis. Is that what's going on? Do you know, Bruce?
They did send us a copy, or they sent Martin a copy of a rental agreement. I didn't really look at the content well enough to answer that question, but we have it. We could get you an answer to that.
Okay. Well, and I know that Jonathan Sams actually knows a lot about this too. Jonathan, we were just talking about what was going on at the fairgrounds with the rental of stalls by people, and I know that you and I spoke about that. And I wondered if you had any comments about what was going on with that. And there's been all sorts of allegations too of perhaps financial issues, of not knowing what's going on. Certain people on the Agricultural Society board are upset. Certain other people, of course, are not. They're feeling like they're required to do what they're doing. Do you have anything that you might share with us? Because I know that you have been involved with, at least I know you're not representing anybody, but you've been involved with the situation or knowledgeable about it.
Well, first, I'm surprised no one else is here. I drove in the parking lot, and I thought there'd be several people here, and I'm surprised that no one is.
Go ahead, state your name.
Jonathan Sams, and I am a citizen of Turtle Creek Township, and I don't represent anybody. I'm just here to see what's going on. So I'm not a horseman. I'm not on the Ag Society board, but I am an interested person because my kids have been in fair for a long time, and I would like to see some long-term success out there, and so I came to see what was going on and watch more than anything. I didn't know I'd be up here talking today.
Right.
But I know that no, I don't know anything firsthand. I've heard that they're running at a loss. That there's been some rate changes back and forth on rentals. My understanding right now is that right now it's $175 per stall. I've heard that about a third of the horsemen aren't paying rent. I've heard that there's $90,000 in arrears on rent being paid out or not being paid on the stalls right now, and that they just can't afford it. At the same time, you have some families that are paying for their stalls out there, some that aren't paying for their stalls out there. The ones who are paying for their stalls, I think they agree that there's a problem. Just if I were to sort of comb through the mess of what I've heard, having an astute accounting that everyone can rely on kind of tells you where all the numbers are, and I don't know that exists right now. And once you have an accounting, then you can figure out what it actually costs, and that would include maintenance on the track and some overhead and deferred maintenance on barns, care for the horses, utility, manure removal. I think the horsemen themselves pay for their own feed, their own hay, and their own grain out there. So I don't think that's a part of what's going on. But I think it's hard for anyone to assess internal or certainly external because you don't know what's going on. You've not had any part in this. I've not had any part in this. And so that's one part of looking at the problem. And then, long-term, separate from the issue of what happens with the horses or not happens with the horses, you know, I think the fair needs to work with you all to figure out long-term solutions for a location to host the fair out there, because there's 8 years left on the lease, as I understand. There's maintenance on the buildings that needs to be done, and so there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed, and I'm certainly willing to help the organization think about some of those. I'm interested. I love all the people on both sides, the horse side and the administration side that's trying to deal with it. And that's about really what I know. I'm not in a position of authority. I'm not in a position to represent what anyone thinks.
Did you
in
read
particular.
the press statement that
No,
they
I haven't.
issued?
I've heard about it.
I mean, it raises more questions to me than it answers. And if I had had somebody with the Agricultural Society who was responsible for this document, I'd question them about it, because I frankly don't understand a lot
Well,
of what
listen,
they're
I mean,
saying.
we didn't have this scheduled right now, so why don't we, if we wanna invite someone from the Ag Society over, we're certainly, public meeting, we can certainly have them do that. My understanding is a couple of things. After talking to Martin last night, he talked to the president of the Ag Society, and he gave some clarity on this. Number one, that we're all concerned with the equestrian community in the county. That's an important constituency. They've been around a long time. They're important members of the community, number one. Number two, the relationship between the equestrian community and the fairgrounds itself has certainly changed over time. That was the epicenter for a long time of our equestrian community, because the races were held there. So of course the horses lived there when the races were held there. However, that all changed a number of years ago when the Racino was built. So now the events are not actually held there, so the revenue and the traffic and all that does not take place on the fairgrounds anymore. So now you just have these legacy stalls that are there, and my understanding is the fair board was trying to run that at close to a break even. And they kept losing money. They then came in, and this has been going on for months. This isn't like a short-term thing. This has all been negotiated with these folks, and it shouldn't be a shock. This has been going on for apparently months and months. They've been in discussions about this. Some consultant or someone looked at the fee structure and recommended going up to what, $250 a month?
Yeah, I believe it was either 225, 250.
So there was a recommendation of going up substantially from 125 to 225, 250 per month, which falls in line with what Commissioner Grossman's personal experience is on what it costs to have a stall, just on a basic level, because they were on an ongoing basis losing money. So they're not in the business of losing money. So they're trying to at least break even on this. They talk about that with their boarders, and the boarders apparently had a major pushback on going up to 225, even to 250, and then they agreed on a $150 number.
They settled on 150, but what was required as well.
And so then, as part of this, that the Ag Society, when people have been apparently promising them things for a long time, we'll pay, oh, well, we'll catch up, don't kick us out, I have nowhere to go. There's been amassed a large deficit in that. So when everybody agreed, okay, we'll go down to 150, but y'all really have to pay, yes, they said, fine, give us your bank account or credit card that we can now hit your account just in case you don't write that check. We have to get paid just like any business does. And essentially, Martin, there were 4 respondents out of 44 that provided that?
Yeah, it was only about 10%. Yeah.
So I think that was what went down from the standpoint of, they tried, with the community, they said, okay, they gave in to a price reduction of what they thought it was going to be, but they required something of, we need a commitment that it's actually going to be collected revenue for us if we continue to do this, and 4 of 44 actually provided the information. That's my understanding.
So I can't answer to a lot. I don't have any firsthand knowledge on that. You probably have some better knowledge than I have on a lot of those issues. What you've said is you know, I've heard rumors of some of the same things that you've indicated. one of the key elements that I think you said was that several years ago, when the track, when the actual racing left, that the business proposition changed, and that there was not a comprehensive review on what the future would look like out there. And so I think that is the seed, the kernel from which challenges arise. And I agree with you 100% on that. And so what the Ag Society is going to do, what the horsemen are going to do, I don't know. I'm not in a position to be able to do. You know, I hope they're able to figure it out.
The only thing I do know is the Board of County Commissioners own that 94 acres.
That's right.
So ultimately, the systemic goings-on there, like what's actually happening there, is up to this board. They have a lease to run the day-to-day operations under the Ohio statute as they see fit. That is their responsibility. However, if there is a major change to the purpose of that, Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, they can't just go and turn that into condos or houses. They can't just go and do something outside of the scope. We own the property, and if there's a change directionally, because I hear some people are saying, oh, they're gonna do this or that, ultimately, the Board of Commissioners would make that decision if there's some sort of an actual change to fair operations. Are we holding the fair there or not? And from what I understand, they want to focus on two things. Number one, the fair, and number two, 4-H is what, and correct me if I'm wrong, Martin, you've talked to the board president directly, give me a synopsis of, is that what you understand?
No, it's absolutely what I understand is that there is no intention to move anything relative to the fair. They want to concentrate on that, and I think they want to get back to what maybe is their original purpose, and that is supporting youth in the 4-H programs.
So Bruce, what are the terms of our lease in terms of when that lease comes up?
It has to be renewed periodically. I could probably pull it up here. I was looking for an answer from Mr. Grossman. Your answer is the way it's written, Mr. Grossman, 30 days is the way their rental agreements seem to read. Let me get back to the term.
30 days notice to vacate?
Correct. So, which implies,
Month to
it's a
month.
month to month, yes. Then the Fair Board has to renew 60 days prior to the expiration of the extension term that they're in.
Which is what, do you know off the top of your head what kind of extension term we're into?
I think it's 5
Yeah, I think
years.
they're 5 or 7.
Well, I guess, I think we are limited within the scope of the contract, that we have, the existing contract. They have the authority to determine their business operations, and I'm hesitant to weigh in on the business operations. But I think that I am really concerned that perhaps the contract that the board has not set forth, what its clear objectives are with this public property, and how we wish for whoever contracts with the board on this property to operate. I loathe corporate welfare, and I don't like using public property to subsidize some people's, to advantage some people over other people. I don't like being a competitor that is less than the market rate in the marketplace. I don't like any of those things. I think if it's a business operation, that we ought to be operating it in a way that supports the primary function, which is the fair and the 4-H activities that go there, which we are, I think, unified behind that common purpose. And so when there's not a clear accounting of what those goals cost and how those revenues are coming in to support that, it's ultimately going to come back again on taxpayers to assure that those activities that actually happen. And so I guess my point is I'd really like to understand when this contract comes back up so that we can have a broader conversation about what are the goals out there. How do we ensure that the primary purpose for that property is able to work, and then be able to construct the terms of the lease around those, around securing that objective, that true public purpose. I don't know that boarding horses is in the public interest, but it may be in the public interest to board horses at fair market value in order to support the public purpose of the fair and 4-H. And to me, it doesn't look like that there's any clarity around a business plan. It looks a lot like corporate welfare, and some people pay and some people don't pay, and it's a sweetheart deal. And in the meantime, there's this public purpose out there that may or may not get what it needs, and that the three of us are committed to. So that is why I asked the question about the terms of the lease. To me, this is a much bigger conversation than whether or not the Ag Society has the ability to enforce the terms of its contract with the horsemen. It appears that they do. And to me, if you pay, then you get to stay. If you don't pay, you don't get to stay. And to be $90,000 in arrears, what's taken them so long to enforce the terms of the lease? So
The answer, Commissioner, is it's 5-year terms. The original term was through December of 2013, so there would have been a renewal in 18. There would have been a renewal in 23. We need to check our records and make sure that happened. I do have on my computer one of the renewals, but I don't have the most recent ones, and those are 5-year term renewal terms, and they have up to 8 5-year renewal terms that they're entitled to do by just giving us written notice of intent at least 60 days prior to expiration of the current term that they're renewing for the next 5 years.
And Bruce will, and again, talking about the larger issues, number one, I agree with you completely on your statement. And number two, that when I first took office in 2005, there's rarely things that shocked me. The situation at the Warren County Fairgrounds shocked me. And it literally took us, according to that, almost 3 years from 2005 to 2008 to get a lease. There was not even a lease in place. Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong,
You're right.
that this was public land with a private enterprise being run on it that had no money coming back to the public.
I'd say that is a gross understatement. Commissioner Young was very diligent in making sure that we cleaned up the history of the Warren County Fairgrounds when he came into office, because it was shocking what had been going on. And that was all public. There were, as I recall, the Dayton Daily News ran a big story or a series of stories on what they deemed the corruption that had gone on out there for years. And you're right, we always thought there was a lease, but there was no lease.
As a matter of fact, when you talked about what could we do, and in my, I don't know, way of thinking, when people were telling me, no, basically, we don't care what you say, I say, we own it, and they said, we don't care. Eventually, I said, well, if you care about the electric, you should care, because we'll turn off the electric. You won't be able to turn on the lights, was one of the, Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, was one of the things when they were basically pushing back saying, we're not going to do this. And then it was, okay, well, we can do certain things and you're not gonna have any power. It was one of the ways we even got them to the bargaining table, if I remember correctly, that we literally had to threaten to turn off the lights to get them to talk to us. But again, this is 20 years ago. So things have improved dramatically since then. The reputation, the integrity of that Agriculture Society, that I think they are trying to be good stewards of 94 acres of public land that has two primary purposes at this point: operating a county fair and operating a countywide 4-H program.
I might mention one thing to Commissioner Jones, and that is, it's always been a big question at the fairgrounds about how much of that acreage, and it's 94 now, we had a little more and we've carved a little out, how much of that acreage was really needed to have a county fair and for the 4-H operation. Obviously, they don't need 94 acres. And we've always presented that question. I don't know that it's ever been answered, but that's been the biggest question that's lingered for years.
Well, and I guess I'm sorry, Tom.
It's okay. Well, first off, I'm getting emails about this issue. I'm getting phone calls about this question. So it's clear that we are not the party that is responsible for these horse boarding contracts. We're not responsible for how they're set, how they're managed. But we're in the news and we're being questioned. We own the property. We have an interest in it. That document that I was just given, their press release, raises a lot of questions to me. And I do believe that the rates are low. But on the other hand, that's what they've agreed to for years. And so here's some of the questions that have come up that are not answered by this document. One, they're being challenged with regard to their accounting and their finances and whether they're being properly handled. And I don't know that they've got an accountant or that's looked at this and has properly audited or gone through their books and records. But I think that that's a fair question. I asked that and suggested that we maybe have an agricultural society representatives here today. I realize I'm only one person. That didn't happen. I believe that it would be appropriate for us to have them to come in to answer some of these questions. I think that Shannon is absolutely right. We should have the kind of overview discussion that she mentions. But right now, it's all about 300 horses who have been boarding there apparently for years, who've been kicked out very quickly over issues that may be legitimate, but I have to say, when I read that document, I have a lot of questions about it. And I'm not making a judgment. I don't know how to make a judgment, except I know that that's not how I run a boarding operation. And I run one where I got to make money, or I go out of business. And but to me, it seems like this agricultural society doesn't print money either. So I don't understand how they could possibly be losing the kind of money they're talking about. Do they have the access to the public purse to do that? They don't. So none of the economics issues that I'm hearing make any sense to me whatsoever. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have a conversation with them. And I'm not sure that they're giving us that kind of information. Maybe we're not even entitled to it.
I think they do. I mean, that's a fairly aggressive statement. I mean, they have financials, correct? And
they are their own nonprofit. They have financials. I've written that down. I mean, to answer Commissioner Grossman's question is, I did have a conversation with the board president, Dana. She just wasn't available for this Tuesday. If it's a pleasure of the board, I could ask her what her availability is for next Tuesday to be able to be present, or whatever date works best for everybody, to answer those questions and present that. But she just wasn't available this Tuesday to come.
But we've seen copies of their financials. They provide.
Yes.
I mean, that is part of the term. There are financials that exist, and this board has access to them.
Does it show that they're losing money?
I can't answer that today.
Well, you see, I don't get how you can have a group that claims that they're losing a lot of money, which is what's being claimed publicly, when they're not borrowing from a bank. They don't have some letters of credit or something like that. They don't have anything, some equity line they can draw on. If they're losing money, it's coming out of somebody's pocket.
Well, they're
Well,
saying they're
they-
90,000 in arrears.
Okay, see, that's exactly the kind of weasel kind of language that would like to have asked about. Because when they say that they're in arrears, that's way different than saying they're losing money on this horse boarding operation. And so, because it appears to me that we're getting a lot of information, that document that I just read insinuates this, but it doesn't say it flat out. And so
All right.
Look, I'm angry about anything. Look, David, I'm not, you keep interrupting me. But all I'm saying is this. I think I have a legitimate, as a board, have a legitimate right to ask these questions about the functioning of a piece of property that we own, that we lease. And I know that we don't have, and this is why I open it up. We don't, for anybody that's watching this, that's criticizing us, or saying that they should call us, or me, and I've received calls, or email, and I've received emails. And I believe as a public servant over public property, that we have at least a right to ask questions to find out what's going on.
Well, the reason I interrupted you is you keep asking Jonathan, who is not vested, has no knowledge in this. I'm saying, I think my previous statement was, we can have the board come in.
Okay, that's what I'd like to do. And Jonathan actually, so you know what? Jonathan, is very familiar with a lot of these people. I don't know all the people. One of the questions that I asked of Martin was, who's all on the Ag Society board? I don't know. And he sent me the Ag board membership because I wanted to see who I knew. And I know a bunch of the people, but there's a bunch of people that I don't know. And because I have been communicated with, I have had phone calls, I have had emails to me personally. I don't know, maybe you guys are getting these as well. And I feel like they've raised some legitimate questions. And when I look at the economics of this, I don't understand the economics of it. And believe me, I'm very familiar with horse boarding operations. And it looks like they are getting a very good deal. And so if somebody's queered this because they're not paying or not giving a credit card, okay, I'd like to understand some of that. But that's all.
Well, what I can do is I can reach out to the board president. I know next Tuesday is election day, and historically, I know that folks have been, we've had meetings, but we either lose one member or we've canceled sometimes.
Yeah, and that frequently is me.
I just didn't want to say that, but that's fine.
It's okay.
So, would you like me to shoot for the 5th or shoot for the 12th or whatever obviously she has a day job and she has other board members, so which date would you like me to shoot to try to have some representation from the Ag Society here?
Certainly, I think that there's some urgency to this because of the fact that they've told people to leave by December 1. So I would say, the following Tuesday.
Okay, no, that's fine,
2 weeks from now.
okay.
Is that okay?
Sorry, the 12th you said?
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize. I will reach out to her after we're finished with our meeting and see if she has availability on the 12th, and if not her, if there's other,
Well, maybe some other representatives.
I assume they have officers that they could send as well.
Sure.
So there are, something I do know that the board is unified on, and that is that the entire board wants to, because I was there during this part of the meeting last week, the board would like to maintain their presence at the fairgrounds. There is a lot of infrastructure there that would cost millions of dollars to duplicate elsewhere. And so the board would very much like to find a way to stay there, to extend the lease, to be financially and fiscally solvent into the future. And they've asked me to help them think through those issues. And certainly, I think that the whole board is unified, whereas the board's not unified on the horse issue. They are unified on the desire to be at the fairgrounds and to use it properly.
And that's, to me, the horse issue feeds in to the bigger goal, which is to be able to stay there and run the fair.
One way or the other, profitably or unprofitably.
Exactly,
If it's unprofitable,
exactly.
it undermines it.
Exactly.
If it's profitable, it supports it.
And so, I have no opinion at this juncture about, other than fundamentally believe if the terms, they're on a month-to-month lease, they've satisfied the terms of the lease and providing the notice. If you didn't pay, you didn't pay, and I'm hearing that this is below market rates anyway, so, if it's sometimes it takes these sorts of things to kind of get to the real issue. And the real issue is, if the primary purpose, from my standpoint as the owner of the property, is to be able to maintain the fair, which we are statutorily required to do. So we have to pay for this if we don't have another way to pay for this. It's in our interest to figure out how we can utilize this land in a way that perpetuates the common purpose that we all support. And that it sounds to me like the boarding operation is undermining the ability to be able to financially sustain this. And so, I don't have an opinion about whether, it seems to me on its face, they have 30 days notice to terminate the lease, they can terminate the lease if they want to terminate the lease. But it sounds to me like it's a greater opportunity to say this is a possible revenue generating source that will help us serve our mission, and that right now that is not serving our mission, rather it's serving some individuals who are able to access boarding at under market rates at best, and perhaps at worst, without paying for it.
And let me say something about this market rate business, which I'm familiar with. This is a different kind of boarding operation than I've ever seen before. But that's because while I boarded some racehorses, this is a facility that simply boards to trotting racehorses, period. And they don't pasture these horses. These horses stay in their stalls. Their exercise is running around a ring, and that's it. This is a very different kind of an operation. So they don't have to maintain pasture land. They don't have to have grazing. They don't have to plant, grass, and none of that's going on with this thing. So their economic structure is really very different from what I'm familiar with. On the other hand, I think that it's valuable to get them here because there's all sorts of rumors flying around that there's another jurisdiction involved in this, and that wants the property or wants to use the property or us to sell the property. And Commissioner Young's absolutely right. That can't happen unless we go along with that. There's so many rumors here about what's really responsible for this or causing this to happen, that I think that it's worthwhile for us to have a meeting to make sure that we understand exactly what's going on. And I think that it's also fair for us to express an interest in having these horse boarders treated properly, but also to make sure that public property is not being misused, or there's not some sweetheart deals being done that's inappropriate on any side of this.
Agreed across the board, everything that you guys have said. Now we just need space from Ag Society to, probably both sides of the thought process, to come in and present to you guys so that there can be a complete discussion on it.
Okay. Anyone else have anything else to add?
I've texted the board president. We'll see
Well,
how.
tentatively, we'll try to have a work session with at least someone from the Ag Society on the 12th. Very good. Thank you, Jonathan.
My pleasure. I happen to be able to stand up here and be the person you talk to, even though I'm highly uninformed on some of this stuff. So,
Normally, you are the subject matter expert on all things when you stand up there.
not today.
Today, you happen to be the only person in the crowd. So, by default,
Then
we will
something.
turn to you.
Nice speaking to you all.
Very good. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
I move that we go into executive session to consider the dismissal or discipline of a public employee pursuant to ORC 121.22G1.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.